Hey everyone, welcome to Healthy Profits Podcast. I'm your host, Ray, and I'm so excited to be sharing with you one of my favorite ways to engage more listeners through Instagram, using live follow-ups for your podcast episodes, the guests that you bring on, and just to really bring in this extra energy of excitement, of people getting engaged, talking back to you, your listeners, having an active conversation with you inside of your podcast. There's so many people that go through pod fade is what we like to call it, because they get uninspired. I think this happens when there's an unengaged listener or a list of unengaged listeners, which if you're amplifying it from listener to listeners, all of a sudden you have more people not quite engaged. It makes it feel even worse. And so this happens when you don't feel connected to who you're speaking to. It's the same thing as a juicy conversation with one or two people that can literally transform your life versus watching a speaker talk in front of an audience of a couple thousand people and feeling no connection. So that's what we're going to dive into today. I'm going to share with you my game plan for how I combated this issue of having unengaged listeners, and I will take you through the exact step-by-step plan that my team took to engage the listeners and to really bring up that level of excitement using Instagram live follow-ups. All right, let's dive in. So before I started a new season of my show, I remember there was a point where I started really feeling disconnected with what I was sharing on my show. And now this comes from a really great reason, which was that I had batch recorded so many episodes ahead. My team was working on them. They were doing all the stuff. I was able to look at other things in my business and in my life. And that's an incredible goal to get to. We actually really encourage everyone, all of our clients inside of Evolve Podcasting, to be batch recording and getting ahead of the game so that way they can actually take their eye off this ball and focus on whatever's most pressing in their business. And of course, have a reliable team that they can trust will continue to deliver the show on time, get the assets going, all of that stuff. So I was in that place. I was kicked back a bit. I was chilling. I remember it was also like the holidays were starting to kick into gear, but I remember feeling like, is my show even happening still? It was a really weird, disconnected experience, which a few years prior, I would have never even allowed to happen. So for anyone that is relating to where I'm at and has had this experience of disconnect with parts of their business, first of all, bravo, congratulations, because you have made it so far in your business that you've let go of the reins, you've let go of some pieces around control and perfectionism, and this is how you grow and scale a business, is by letting go. But on the other hand, there was this like kind of sad piece, because the podcast for me before that was really this creative expression. It was this plate where I could bring whatever was arising in my life and business to the table and share it in a very real live setting. So all of a sudden, things have gotten so ahead of the game that I felt just disconnected with what I was talking about, my listeners, and all of that. And it was also really interesting because at that point, I realized, oh, I have actually a new idea. I want to start a whole new season. A lot of our clients actually go through the same thing and they feel like, oh, I want to re-inspire my podcast. I want to get it going again. Like, there are listeners, but it's not feeling the way I want it to feel. It's not also maybe magnetizing the right people. There's not exponential growth that is coming from it. It's just trucking along. A lot of our clients in Evolve Podcasting come to us with this space. And so we say, hey, let's relaunch your podcast. And this is what I went through myself. So I relaunched my podcast with a new season. I had just become a new mom. I wanted to shift out of just talking about female entrepreneurial, like soul alignment in your business. And I wanted to shift it into a conversation of all of that, but targeted specifically to the mompreneur and even more specifically to the new mom. So I called it the new mommy season. And it was so fun to record and get into it. And I realized, okay, I'm going to do this a little differently. So yes, I still was batching. And again, it's so important to batch if you have a team, if you have other things going on, which who doesn't, right? You have other things in your life and your business. So I started batching, but I realized, how can I not feel so disconnected? And I came up with a solution and a very simple system that I'll be sharing with you a little later on in this podcast. And honestly, this system that I created was the perfect way to get this real-time feedback back from my listeners so I could specifically pivot the show as well as I was batching ahead of time. But I was able to get it to a place where I was directly talking to very specific people. And with your business, when you start talking to very specific people, of course, those specific people are going to be your ideal client, which then you can really guide them into the journey of your business and all your offerings and what you have to share and support them with wherever they're at in their life. So this is what I got to really see firsthand in my own experience. And it was the most rewarding thing when I started getting DMs and people started coming up to me at events saying, oh, I listened to this episode. I love that episode when you had so-and-so guest on. I love when you talked about this and that. And I was like, ooh, okay, cool. This is working. There's that engagement that I was missing before because I wasn't doing this follow-up system. So again, if you're feeling disconnected from your podcast, it's totally okay. But there's a reason for it. It's calling you in to be more connected to not only your podcast and your creative experience in your podcast, but also the listeners on the other side. So don't give up if you get into that disconnected place. Don't go into pod fade because you have something so important to share that needs to get out there. And you have to be consistent in getting it out there. No one else is going to do that for you. This type of information, when you are getting consistent and you are sharing it, and then for all of you health and wellness entrepreneurs out there, the stuff that you have in your back pocket, the wisdom that you hold in your head is stuff that could actually save a life. So I do believe there's also this other piece of responsibility. It is your responsibility to stay engaged yourself and also make sure that you are engaging so that way the people that are needing your information can find it easily. We don't want to be making a podcast that doesn't have listeners, that doesn't have an engaged audience, because if no one is there to receive what you're giving when you're giving it so fully, then really it does feel like lost energy and a waste of time. So here's my 3-step plan that I want to share with you to really emphasize, put your mark in saying, my episode came out. Now, there's the beginning when we launch or relaunch a podcast and you say, oh my gosh, my episode is out. It is amazing. Everyone listen. And you get this hype going. But what happens 3 episodes down the line, 6 episodes down the line, 15 episodes down the line? What about the random episode 37? Are you still bringing that level of hype and connection? I don't know. But if you do these 3 steps, I can ensure you that you will. So set these up from the start, whether you are launching for the first time or relaunching. Get this going because it's a muscle. And as you repeat it, you'll also get more familiar with it. Your team will get more familiar with it. And then it will eventually become like brushing your teeth. And you'll know when my podcast comes out, I'm going to do boom, 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 these 3 things. So let's dive in, shall we? So you have to make sure that you do have this game plan to expand your reach by sharing on more than one platform. You can't just put the podcast out there and think that it's going to end its journey and destination into the perfect hands. No, you got to put that energy out there and really get familiar and familiarize your team as well. This is a great place where your team can come in to do the support. You as the expert, you record the stuff and then make sure you have a team to follow through on this 3-step plan. And if you don't, then it's just, you got to do it yourself, and it's a little bit more of a grind, but trust me, you'll get there soon enough. So you want to be able to be on multiple platforms and cross promote to the people that want to hear you. So when I began was I started doing my Instagram live every time I had an episode syndicate out and it got released. So that would be the first part is, oh my gosh, my episode came out. This is what I talked about. Da 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 da. If you batch recorded your episodes, sometimes it's a little bit like, what did I do? So that's why it's great to have good notes and set yourself up for success. If you have reminders or if you use a calendar, for me, I use Asana. I set up these tasks when it's actually a recurring thing, so it's super simple. Your episodes should be coming out on the same day each week. So you can just make it reoccurring. This can be just so easy. But then you say like, okay, this episode was about this. Have little markers so you can remember, and you have to plan it in advance, right? Set yourself up for ease. But it would get me back in the energy of what I was talking about in that conversation. And the cool thing is that opened my mind to being like, oh, I remember when I recorded this episode, I actually thought about Sarah and Janine and Paul. And I was thinking that those 3 people would actually really benefit from this episode. And so then as you're going back in and doing the Instagram live, it's also a way to remind yourself of maybe these notes or people that you know that are actually looking for this information, and maybe you just haven't had the time to have a call with them. Maybe they're not a client but you want them to know, or maybe it's someone that said they knew someone that needed some support on X topic, and it just so happens that podcast episode was on that topic. This is an amazing way to just get it into the right hands, because you'll be a little bit more present with who really needs that episode at that time. So that's one way you can do it. Another way that you can do it is I also had my team, whenever I would bring a guest onto a podcast episode, I would have my team reach out to that guest 2 weeks before syndication. Again, everything is planned out. This is all mapped out in advance. So it's not, oh shoot, 2 weeks is up. It's like, no, we know this is going to happen based on my podcast calendar, and the team is very aware of all that stuff. So they would reach out to the guest 2 weeks before syndication and ask them, hey, do you want to do an Instagram live featuring you to give a sneak peek into the episode? When I started doing this, it was so fun, because most of the time that guest that I brought on was someone that I admired and was really excited to talk to, and the episode we recorded. And honestly, usually when I finish recording an episode with a guest, I'm like, I wish this went longer. I wish I had more time to talk to you. I wish I had more time to connect. And so this is another amazing touch point to be able to connect with these special people in your life, whether they're new friends, maybe there's someone that you got recommended to, or maybe it is a friend that you do collaborations with. This is just an incredible way to reconnect. And so you let them know, I would love to do a live featuring you. And what I found was guests are more than happy to do that, especially if you say, I just want to do a short 5-minute Instagram. It's not really going to take that much time or energy out of their resources. But what it does is it opens up the spotlight within your own community to feature them. And everyone loves, like we've talked about ego intros in a earlier episode. Everyone loves that ego boost, and that's what you get to give someone in a very loving, clear way. So it helps promote the guest to your audience, but guess what also happens on the other end? More likely than not, because you are interviewing them and really featuring them in the episode that you had featured them on, they're going to want to share that with their people. And Instagram makes it so easy to actually just make it a collaboration. When that happens, you get to also get in front of their entire audience, which I always suggest asking the guests to promote and creating promo material for them and all of that. And most do. Some guests don't. Some forget about it. Some don't have the time. Sometimes the team forgets about it. It slips through the cracks. It's not top priority. Well, this is a way to ensure that there is some promotion that happens on their end as well, and is an easy lift to the finger because you're really just sharing and getting to highlight them. So this is just such a fun way to cross promote and get it out there. And then, of course, there are promotional images that you can be using on social media along the way. Like I said, provide that for your guests or have your team do that also for your solo episodes as well. And so you're leading up to that moment. And then the day of the release, I like to do that live for myself. I like to give it about a week span. So say my episodes go out every Tuesday. I offer the guest, hey, are you free between Monday to Friday for 5 minutes? Literally, no one has ever said no. It's so easy. So we put that in the lineup and in the calendar, and then that's how we get to then add the images and other promotional material, maybe reels out there. And now the guest is actually more aware that that's going to be coming into their inbox as well, and they'll be more likely to be promoting that too. So this is just such a fun way. And one other benefit that is really cool is that and we'll actually talk about this. We'll talk about the best way to pitch yourself as a guest, but in a different episode. So go into that if you want to dive deeper into it. But a little teaser is that a great way to get yourself on other podcasts is to have that podcast host a guest for your own show. So if you've done this, so say there's someone else that has an amazing mama entrepreneurial podcast. I bring her onto my show. I interview her. And of course I'm thinking, wow, I would love to be on her show too. What if we finish the interview and she's like, I gotta run. Oh, my baby's crying, or all the mom things or the normal entrepreneurial things. Oh, I have a new meeting I gotta jump on. So you finish the call real quick. And sometimes you don't have to. And sometimes right there, they'll say, that was an amazing interview. I want to have you on my show. And it's this beautiful reciprocity. But sometimes that doesn't happen. When you re-engage and reconnect with that guest around doing an Instagram live, it gives them also that second opportunity to have you come to mind for an amazing guest to be on their show. And more likely than not, if I wasn't asked to be a guest after the recording, after the live, then it's like 100% of the time they will be like, oh my gosh, I am learning more about you. This is amazing. You have so much to offer. Let's get you onto my show. And wow, how cool is that to get plugged into another show where then you get to promote as well. So of course, these steps can all be taken to grow your audience engagement, but let's be real, the most important thing you'll want to do is talk to people about your show. That's how you really get that engagement up. So let your inner circle know what's going on. Make sure your team that is producing your show is aware of your big why and the mission and what you're wanting to share through your show, including what direction do you want ideal clients to go on? What is the path that they get to go on after your show? Everyone, yourself included, and your team need to have that in your awareness. And then that way you can really share that easily when people are talking to you about the show or you're sharing about the show to them. It's always fun to go to an event and be like, I have a show. My next episode is coming out next week. Send me a message, or even asking people, hey, can I get your honest feedback on that episode? And then you following up and re-engaging. So these are some incredible tools, incredible tips in terms of how to create more engaged listeners for your podcast and really give yourself that inner engagement as well around what you're doing, your mission, and why it is so important to put in that extra effort. You're already recording the podcast episode, which is the biggest lift. So make sure you do that 10% extra of resharing, getting it out there, hopping on the live, putting yourself out there that 10% more, because that is a little bit that will make a huge difference in the long run. So these are some ways that you can seamlessly connect listeners to opportunities, to be able to connect with you more, to continue to listen to more episodes, to even go deeper into your product suites and how your services work. And of course, then you can start monetizing. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope this gave you some fresh ideas for how you can really use Instagram Lives as amazing follow-ups. And I just encourage you to engage with your listeners so they can also engage with you. We'll see you on the next episode.
Now that was a great episode. Thanks for joining us and tuning in to the Healthy Profits Podcast.
Sammy and I are here to help you turn your health podcast into a treasure trove of opportunity for your listeners and your business. So join us twice a week as we unleash our favorite tips and strategies that have helped our clients at Evolve Podcasting turn their show into a thriving part of their business.
And make sure you subscribe and listen in as each episode builds upon each other. And I know that you're a generous leader, so make sure you share this podcast with your fellow wellness entrepreneurs so we can all grow together.
Until next time, stay healthy and keep thriving.
Bye.
Bye.